Kelsey speaking here. And I'm the Director of Technology, so we'll go a little bit into who we are, but today we are going to be focusing on a small part of digital marketing. It's actually a really important part of digital marketing is your website. And we are going to be discussing a specific approach to building a website, which is the branding forward website. So actually putting your story and your brand as the front-facing aspect of it. And just to give you a quick idea of what we're going to do today is we are going to start with an introduction, then we're going to have a small activity, and don't worry, we're not going to put you into groups or anything, but just so you're not caught off guard by being asked to engage. And then we will go through some of the basic principles of web design, and then some tips that you can apply today to your website if you have one, or that you can keep in mind as you move forward building it. So without further ado, we'll start by saying a little bit about who we are.
Yeah, so we are Psyche Digital. We opened our doors a little over a year ago now. We work with businesses both in the Durango area and across the US, across a bunch of different sectors. You can see a bunch of those sectors on the side of the screen there, but basically our goal is to bring world-class marketing and our startup expertise and our passion for authentic storytelling to businesses of all sizes. We have combined almost 20 years of experience in the marketing space and startups and technology. So yeah, that's a really quick intro to us. If you want to learn more about our marketing and things that we do, I do want to invite you all to a marketing meetup that we do once a month. It's the last Wednesday of the month, so actually tonight, at the outdoorsy space at the Esoterra tasting room. So come and check that out. We always give a 10-minute little speech with some tips and information about marketing. And then we jump into a question and answer section. You can even bring your marketing strategy and we will review it with you and give you some pointers. So keep that in mind. And then we're going to hop into our activity, which Kelsey is going to lead.
Yeah, and I'll start by actually telling a story. When Kate and I first were working together in marketing, excuse me, we were working for an investor marketing firm. So actually doing marketing to attract investors for companies who were starting to list on the stock exchange or trying to find institutional funds to put financing towards their offering. And we, we're happy to be doing the marketing, but it was really hard to connect with those audiences. So we had this crazy idea, of course, during the pandemic and the beginning of the Great Resignation, like, hey, we work pretty well together and we love Durango, right? We want to spend our lives here. Would it be out of control for us to maybe break out on our own? So we started moonlighting before we even really had a company. And the first website that we built outside of a formal marketing firm was for a local business in town before we even built our own. And this local business is Still Point Mindfulness. Anyone who knows Janet Curry knows that she's an incredible resource in our community. And one of the things that was so profound to us about working on her website was this emphasis on inviting yourself to be present with what you're doing in the day-to-day, and that applies to your business as much as anything else in your life. So we wanted to actually start with a little bit of a drop-in, a mindfulness drop-in for all of you here. It's not easy to be taking an hour out of your day on a Wednesday. You're all very busy people. You have families, you have jobs, but for some reason or another, you've decided this was a good use of your time, even those of you who may still be at your job, working at your computer on the Zoom screen. So we just want to invite you to take a moment and ask yourself, like, what brought you here? What made this a priority for you today, right? This digital marketing conversation that we're having, and just give yourself a moment and see if anything arises, or maybe many somethings. And when something does arise, I invite you to
shout it out.
Actually, we're going to actually set it aside. I want you to set whatever came up for you, the reason, set it aside, and then ask the question again as if you didn't ask it the first time. So just begin again. What brought you here? And, you know, maybe it's something that's really energizing for you. Maybe it's something that is not energizing for you, like my boss is forcing me to be here, for example. And then again, just setting it aside and asking again. And as many times as you'd like or feels comfortable, once you do dig to the bottom, or what seems like the bottom right now, of what is your reason for being at this event and engaging with this topic of your website, I invite you to shout it out now, to share. And on Zoom, if you want to enter it into the chat box, we'd love to hear. It is an invitation, not a requirement.
Because I don't know a lot about the digital side, so I want to be a sponge and hear what you guys have to say.
Great. Curiosity. Reason?
Well, I'm here for both the professional side of it for my own company, but also my personal side of it. If I ever want to do some future expansion on my own, and have my own business, I'm excited to learn about how I would do that for myself.
That is wonderful. So keeping your doors open, right?
Definitely connection. I mean, meeting one is a big deal, but also my work is getting the verbiage and language because it's kind of forward-thinking work. And
Yeah.
that digital marketing is, I don't have a website yet, and people go, why don't you? I'm like, I don't have the language. So I'm hoping to pull some gems and get back.
Awesome. That's great. Great. Well, thank you guys. And anyone who didn't, we got one comment on the Zoom. Taking on a new communications role for work. Curious to improve connections and communication across many different organizations I work with. Melanie and Nicole. Yeah. So, you know, there is no wrong answer for what brings you to the market and what brings you to starting your own business. But it is really an important question to ask yourself is why you're doing what you're doing when embarking on the branding process and when creating content to reach audiences. The second really important question, and this is a little more straightforward, I would say, is who needs to know about why you're doing what you're doing? Who's your audience, in another turn of phrase, right? So really, what that is the starting point for any marketing activities. And it's even more so a challenging feat with the digital age, because there's so many options and so many venues to connect your why to your who. And finding that venue can be challenging. And we could talk for hours about it. But today we want to focus on your content hub, which for today's talk and purposes, we're going to talk about that as a website. Your content hub could be another form, a Facebook page, a WhatsApp group, a Twitch channel. But today we're going to talk about the website. And with the content hub, what you want to be able to do is serve your existing audiences, attract new audiences and visitors, and then, of course, generate new business. And ideally, you would be doing this from a place of authentic knowledge of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing.
Awesome. So before we really jump into best practices on the website, I want to take a little step back and ask you guys, do you know the difference between branding and marketing? Yeah, that's kind of the usual response. So what I like to use is a metaphor that basically says marketing is like asking someone out on a date. Branding is the reason they say yes. Okay? So branding is basically the process of giving meaning to an organization or company, products, or services by creating and shaping a brand in the consumer's mind. So a brand is basically like the perception that someone has of your company when they interact with it. Marketing, on the other hand, is the tactical use of that brand. So it could be emails, it could be social media, it could be digital advertising. That's what marketing, and the brand is what you're communicating out. How do we do that communication of your brand? It's going to come from your logo. It's going to come from your business name. The business name is hugely important. Your logo is hugely important. The colors you use, your imagery. If you have a brand guideline, that's an excellent tool in communicating that brand. A brand guideline basically outlines what fonts, what imagery, what language, what colors that you can use across all of your channels to keep that consistent look and feel. It's also really important to have a key messaging document. A lot of businesses don't take the step, they don't take the time to sit down and think about what message am I trying to say, what are my values as a company, what is my why? And those are important things to list out no matter what sector you're in. And I know like sometimes like companies, maybe like the payroll department, thinks, oh, I don't need to say my values necessarily. We're pretty cut and dry. We do this one thing or multiple things. I know you do a lot of things. But even for companies that maybe have a very clear and more mathematical or process-based business, you still need to map out that key messaging to fully communicate what that brand is. For the website in particular, branding is really, really important. It is communicated in some very specific ways. It is communicated through your story, how well you tell that story through your messaging on the website. It's communicated through the fonts that you use. Are they easy to read? Is it a kind of fancy font that gives this idea that you're a really upscale brand? There's a lot of communication that happens through your fonts, your colors, your imagery, and it's all really, really important. Some key concepts when you are thinking about your branding: it needs to be easily identified. A lot of times people want to express every little piece of their brand in their logo, but it makes a really, really complicated logo that has 10 different pieces. Keep it simple so that someone can easily visually digest that. Keep it story-based. Always tie back to your why. If you go back to your why, that's going to communicate really nicely across your website, across all of your channels, and connect everything together. Keep it authentic. If you are not a millionaire with 4 Porsches, you probably shouldn't present yourself that way because it's going to come off as fake. So try to keep everything authentic to yourself and to your story, and keep it consistent across all pages of your website, across all of your channels, so that then when we're looking at your social media, your email marketing, your fonts are the same, your color use is the same, your imagery is the same, so that it all connects in that digital ecosystem. Pass it back over to Kelsey.
Right, so we're gonna jump in now with some basic principles of web design. One thing that I think is important to state here is that this digital format, the visitor, much like with any piece of software that you might engage with, has certain expectations when coming to a digital space. The first thing is orderliness and logic. So uncertainty and chaos is everywhere in our lives. The website is a good space to try and mitigate some of that uncertainty for a person. When you come to the website, as long as there is some linear pathways that are very logical to receive the information that you want to receive or do some action that you're aiming to do, then that is going to be a successful experience for that visitor. Economy of clicks also ties into this, is minimizing the number of clicks without sacrificing clear linear pathways. The number of times I've gone to like a QR code and it pulls up a restaurant's website, and then there's another thing that says see the menu, and I have to click that after already entering the website. It's just one of those things that it's irritating, you know. If you can reduce those pain points in your website as well and make it smooth to operate with, it's going to be a really successful move as well. Did you want to say something? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Another thing is structuring your website so that it's inclusive of 2 different types of receiving information. So the first is scanning. Folks will obviously scan a website for information that they need. making sure that there are things like headlines or icons that make that information easily identifiable while they're scrolling or scanning on their desktop is definitely part of the best practice of web design. The other type of visitor is going to be the deep diver, who actually wants substantial information about what you do. And this person, if they don't have access to that deeper information, you may lose the opportunity to serve them. So having points on your website where there are summaries of important information, that then maybe there's a button to a page with more in-depth information, that serves the deep dive visitor as well. The final thing that I really want to point out is responsiveness is crucial more now than ever before. It is very common that the visitors to a website are split equally between mobile and desktop. Tablet is a much smaller share for most businesses, so before you spend the investment in time and money on making your website responsive for tablet, I would take a look at your analytics to see how much of your visitor share are on tablet. For our clients, we average between 2 and 5%, so it's really not that much. But focusing on a smartphone, standard size screen, and focusing on a laptop, desktop size screen, that should be plenty.
Too, right?
So
That's different.
speed is another thing that you definitely want to keep in mind, and that is affected first by the hosting platform that your website is on, and then second by the types of graphics, videos, and animations that you have on your website. There is a tightrope walk for achieving a good speed on your website, but still having an elevated brand experience, right? So having your images optimized to the smallest size possible without losing your resolution is really important. The typical rule of thumb is ensuring that your web pages load in under 2 seconds. Anything above that, and you start to lose visitors or getting angry phone calls, your website's broken, right? There's a level of impatience for digital content right now.
Are there tools that you can use?
Absolutely.
To like do that assessment if you have a site?
Absolutely. There are free tools, and there's so many now that I would encourage you to do a search. And then depending on the platform that you use too, there may be built-in tools. So like with WordPress, there's a bunch of different plugins that you can find. And then I'm not 100% sure about like Wix, but I imagine that those that don't allow external plugins, they probably have some other things like that. Yeah, maybe some software as well. Yeah, but that's a great question. Yeah, so site speed as well comes into this order versus chaos principle, I think, right? Trying to provide this logic and order and a sense of balance for anyone who comes to the page.
Yeah, because I find myself like I'll wait and then I just go next.
Yeah, it's like I don't have
I haven't even like, like coming up, okay, whatever. You know, like that attention span.
Absolutely.
You know? Or it's just too much, right? You don't even know where to go.
Sure.
Everything is just like,
and that's,
you know.
yeah, that's a great segue into my next topic, which is the site structure and navigation. So when we're designing websites, we think really carefully about the visitor journeys that they have available to them. And it really is like a pick your own adventure book, right? You have to lay things out and the content has to exist. You need to anticipate your visitor needs, but you also don't want to overwhelm them or leave them in the wilderness. There needs to be some kind of guiding line taking them to different parts of your website. So thinking about your navigation, what we do, it's, I mean, just old school. With a notebook or a word processing doc, Google Doc, we'll actually outline all of the pages on the website. And that is driven by what is the visitor expecting to learn about and do to engage with my offering. And the 3 basic pages that we almost always include is your home page, where you have samples of content throughout the rest of your site, and then buttons that lead you to those other pages, basically launching points to those pathways to action. The about page, which is a deeper dive into why you're doing what you're doing and who you are and how you do, maybe methodologies and that kind of thing as well. And then contact, it is a huge waste of your effort if there isn't a way for them to get in touch with you and address other questions that they have. So having a contact page or form of some kind is a really good approach. Some folks do not want to click out into their email inbox or get on the phone to talk with you, so it helps to just leverage the many different contact forms that are available for your website. Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
You guys ever, or what is your strategy, you ever like go directly, don't send everyone to the homepage, but send people deeper,
Oh,
like
sure.
through marketing, so they don't have to get all that
100%.
filter. This person is looking for that, just take them to that
100%.
page, right?
Talk about that.
Deeper, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it seems like that's something I always run up against.
100%, yeah.
Everyone sends everyone to the homepage.
Right, and that again, trying to reduce the number of clicks for the visitor, right? And that applies to any other digital marketing tactics as well. Like, get them where they want to go.
As quickly as possible.
As quickly as possible. Yeah. And then beyond that, building out your site structure. And some websites need to be 30 pages. Some websites could be a single page with a very distinct call to action. So depending on what your business and your offering is, you'll need to map it out and think analytically about what size of a website you need, what kind of information you need to provide. Another thing that I just do want to point out as well is there are some legal pages that are required for websites, depending on what you are using your site for. If it's an e-commerce site, you'll need to have a return policy and a terms and conditions page. And then for any site, you should include a privacy policy if you are having any kind of form or collecting any information from them. And you can get templates that you just copy and paste and insert your own LLC name stuff. That's just something just to cover your butt, you know. Pathways to action, often called calls to action, are how you make your website work for you. So the website, yes, it's an important space for you to display your branding and what you do and why you do it and how competent you are and how credentialed you are. But it is also to help bring in new business. It's also to simplify your life in an ideal world, right? So you can drive action in a number of ways. Some of them that come to mind are building aspirational thinking and feeling like, oh, I want to be on that boat. I want to be in that raft. Another is establishing credibility. So any certifications, any past portfolios of clients that you've worked with. Testimonials is another great credibility tool. Special offers is one way to drive action. Limited time, right? Sign up by this date. You know, you've seen it. And then the other thing is resources. So actually providing some kind of free information or free content, or links to other community resources that would help the visitor with what they want to do. Core call to actions, basically when you are working on making your website work for you, there are different levels of engagement that mark a visitor as warmer of a lead than others. Subscribing is the basic level of engaging with you and becoming a lead. Even if you don't do email marketing, I encourage you to have a subscribe box for your business. And this is just so that you are collecting names and email addresses of folks who are at least interested enough in what you're doing that they would like something sent to them. And then when the time comes, you already have a list. So subscribe, it doesn't take a lot of effort on their part, but it does show some interest. Contact us is a level up because they actually have to include some kind of message to you. Beyond that is a download. If they are downloading some content from you, that indicates an even higher level of commitment to learning more about you. So we have maybe an infographic that you design or some kind of workbook or an ebook are some good examples of downloads. Signing up or registering for something like a course would be another even higher level because presumably you're going to get to interact with them one-on-one after that point. And if you're an e-commerce, add to cart is a really important one, because then you're actually making a sale.
Great. So then we're going to talk a little bit about how this ties into your whole digital ecosystem. So your website should always be considered your content hub. Everything lives there. Everything directs back to your website. Now, again, in this situation, you could also make this your Facebook page. You could make your content hub something other than a website. We think the website has the broadest base of different uses for this. But some different ways that you can interact with that could be social media. It could be your email marketing. It could be your digital advertising or reputation management. That looks like your Google My Business account, or getting reviews on Facebook, something along those lines. Those are all part of your digital ecosystem. What we recommend for our clients is that everything does point back to that website. There are some different ways you can do this, though. A lot of times, one of the mistakes I see people make with their content strategy is they make everything promotional. You send an email, you do a social media post, and it's all about buy me, buy my service, do this thing with me. But they're not offering any value. So if you think about social media, why do you go on to social media? Anybody? Is it to buy things? Is that, no?
Get annoyed.
You get on there to fight with your uncle, or it's for entertainment value. You're looking for something to entertain yourself, for something you're passionate about, for something you're interested in. Rarely are you going on there to look for buying something or buying a service. So what we recommend for our clients is when you're thinking about your content strategy, your email strategy, your social media, all of those different pieces, try to make 70% of that content educational or inspirational or thought leadership, so that people are interacting with you because you're providing value. A great way to do that is through, say, a podcast or through gated content on your website. And what you want to do with those posts, with your social media posts, your email marketing, is direct them back to your website where that content is housed.
And the specific place on the website, like Bert mentioned.
Exactly. So your call to action on that social media post, it is great to have a call to action on every social media post, but that call to action would be, hey, read this blog post that we had. It has some great value for you. You could learn how to build a website, or something along those lines. So they're interacting with you because you've provided value. Once you've done that, then they're more likely to respond to that 30% of your content that is more of that direct promotion, buy me, do this service, because you've already established yourself as a thought leader in that space. Yeah, I think that's just about everything we were going to say on content strategy. We do talk about this a lot in our Them Apples event. So definitely think about checking that out if you want more content strategy.
Yeah, but I think we'll go ahead and open the floor to any questions, and on Zoom as well. I don't know, Kim, would we prefer to have the Zoom folks send a message through the chat if they have a question?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, yeah, I think that makes sense. And then in the room, just raise your hand. I did want to just quickly draw it back to where we started, which was the exercise in thinking about what brought you here and why you are taking this time to learn about digital marketing and websites. Everything that draws from the why, it actually does make a huge impression to your audience, I think. We've seen this time and time again. The more connected you are with why you're doing what you're doing, the better results you're going to see. So I would invite you to any time, any place, not only about your business, just take a moment and ask yourself that question about where you are and what you're doing. And yeah, thanks for being here, and thanks for participating too.
Yeah.
You know, the other part, because I think most people start a business and they know why, or they have some sort of passion. They might have not clarified it.
Right.
But what I run into a lot is they're going after everybody. Like your whole second question, who are you trying to reach?
Right.
Everybody. Well, I don't want to miss any business, so I'm going after everybody, and so not being able to clarify who I'm going after as a way to kind of get rid of a lot of the clutter. That seems to be kind of another thing that's not so obvious.
Yeah, the audience. Yeah, the audience delineation is so important.
Right.
And that, I think, becomes easier once you start engaging with website development, social media design, because there are certain steps in those processes where you have to outline those things before you can even move forward, you know. Like digital advertising is a good example where your target audiences, there are steps in the Facebook form that tells you where you need to put.
Forces you to
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Let's go out there.
Well, and I will say, understanding who your audience is really does translate to your branding, because if I'm communicating to a millennial audience, it's going to be a lot different than communicating to a boomer audience. Like there's just a lot of different things, and it's even so far as to what fonts you choose. As an older audience, you do not want to choose a really thin-lined font because they can't read it on your website. It doesn't work. If you have a younger audience, yeah, go for something really modern and trendy. But it really does, it's an important part of that branding process to know who your audience is.
Right, same with colors as well, like the color selection, you can leverage different color theory based on what, even the country that you're in, right?
Probably the different words, how you describe something might be completely different.
Yeah, and that's the key messaging.
You might use different words, right, or in a different way that
Right.
connect with, you know.
We have a couple of questions from the Zoom world. What would you recommend as a good number of social media posts per week that connect back to your website with a call to action?
Yeah, so jumping into the social media space, one thing that I see happen a lot is people get really, really excited and they sign up for all the channels. They sign up for Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and LinkedIn and all of these different things, and they post really, really a ton of content, like every day, multiple posts a day for about a week. And then they get tired. And then they get tired, which is fair because content is hard to produce and it takes a lot of thought. My recommendation, pick 3 different channels that make sense for your audience. So again, if you are talking to people of an older generation, you probably don't want to be on TikTok or Snapchat. It's probably not the right space for them. I would pick Facebook and LinkedIn and maybe Instagram if they're pretty hip. Pick those 3 channels and then post on each of those channels 3 or 4 times a week. I know a lot of things you'll read online say you have to post every day. That's not actually how the algorithm works. What really happens is you need to post consistently. So it's really important that if you're going to post 3 to 4 times a week, you continue to do that forever. Like literally forever, every week, post 3 to 4 times. Where people really mess themselves up is they do that flurry of posting and then they don't post for 2 months and then they post again a month later, one time. But what's really important is that consistency. If you want to stay on that algorithm, it's about being consistent, not necessarily the amount of content you put out there. So pick 3 channels, post 3 to 4 times a week, and you will cover your bases. Now, if you want to go over and above, yeah, post every day. It's great, but maybe hire a team for that because you're going to be exhausted.
Right. And then
Software, right? That you
there,
could, like,
yeah.
you literally can just do 20 posts versus having to literally think about your post every day.
Exactly, like what we do.
Stuff, right.
We use a couple of different schedulers. There's a few out there. Probably the most inexpensive version is called Buffer. And it basically allows you to schedule posts out. So we look at our posts once a month. We do what we call evergreen content, where we know it'll work any time of the month it goes out. We build out a selection of posts for that, and we put them in a scheduler. And then you only have to respond if there's something really immediate, like, hey, you want an award? Yeah, totally, share that immediately. Or you have an event coming up and you didn't know that when you were doing your editorial calendar. Yeah, go ahead and post that. But you do have this consistent flow of content going out. A slightly more expensive but really great tool for that is called Hootsuite. That's what we use. It's an excellent tool. It's not the cheapest, but the analytics you get off of that and the lack of glitches is great. So I do recommend that one.
So it would post all 3, right, at the same time?
Yep.
Whichever ones you choose, right? So you would also, ideally, you would adjust the content to suit the platform, right? So at Instagram, you can't click on links in posts,
Right.
but Facebook, that's actually a really important advantage.
Instagram version of the content.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it is totally okay to use similar or the same graphics,
Right.
which is a lot of effort as well as pulling those together in some cases. And then I did just want to answer your second part of the question, Nicole, about the connection back with a CTA. So if you mean a CTA, like actually asking them to do something, I think that would be in the realm maybe of like the promotional side content. And so you still want to kind of consider that 70-30 mix. Like you can send them back to your website to learn about things or to provide some thought leadership 70% of the time, and then have 30% of that like subscribe, register for this class, and then any number of those things that are actually trying to bring them into your marketing mix more.
Yeah, generally we do have a call to action in almost every post, but some of it is going back to that thought leadership. Visit blog posts, download check out our podcast, all these different pieces that are not asking them to buy something, but it's still a call to action. You're asking them to interact. And then about 30% is buy my service, direct promotion. This is what I do, buy from me.
There was another question. What type of social media works best? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
It 100% depends on your audience. Again, it goes back to who are you trying to reach? If you're trying to reach high schoolers, be on TikTok. Absolutely. If you are trying to reach business professionals in a more business to business sense, LinkedIn is the place to be. You have to know your audience and you have to know what channel you're on and why.
And is social media absolutely necessary in these times?
There's debate.
I think it also depends on your audience. If your business can thrive on word of mouth alone, then I don't think that there is a need to be on social media. For a lot of businesses, it is a necessary evil, I would say, you know, regardless of your feelings about it, spreading the word and reaching folks where they're spending their time is an important part of it. I mean, it goes to even, you know, print advertising. If a newspaper that you personally do not like to read is where your audience is getting their content, you would put an ad there.
When people are relying a lot, especially on buying or who should I use to, you know, massage me or whatever, what does everyone else think, right?
Your competitor, yeah, that's the other one.
The only way they can find that information is knowing you, and if they don't know you, then you've kind of, right, how are they gonna get that?
Yeah,
Right.
and I mean, I would say, like, if you have other avenues of reaching your customers, you could do a really strategic email marketing plan,
Right.
and that could work. You could have a great PR plan where, say, you're on local news pretty regularly.
Right.
That's great. So there are other ways to connect.
Yeah, you can make it part of your story too. It's like, we are against social media, you know, and have a fun thing about that.
But if you make
want
that
it.
part of your story, you better stick to it.
Yeah.
Again, it has to go back to those values, your why.
Yeah.
Email marketing, how effective is it, or what can you?
I love email
You do?
marketing. So the reason email marketing is great from a marketer's perspective is I know exactly what you're interested in. Like, I can track where you've spent your time in that email. I can track which links you've clicked. I can track how many times you've opened that email. From a client perspective, you need to be really careful, because if you send them an email every day, they're going to hate you. So it's a fine line. I love email marketing because the analytics are so good. I can get a really, really great idea of exactly what people are interested in. But I don't want to spam my clients. I don't want to spam my audience so that they unsubscribe and hate me.
How frequent is too frequent?
It depends on your audience. Generally, I would not send an email more than once a week. For most audiences, I think there's some where it's fine. Like if you're giving daily news updates and that's your whole thing, that's fine. If you have, I don't know, most services, I'd say once a week is enough. A lot of places we do once a month emails, and it's a monthly newsletter. It has all the important information, and that's great. It works really well for them.
Keep them top of mind without over spamming anybody.
It depends on how much valuable information you have to share,
Right.
too.
Do you personalize doing personalized stuff versus
The branding.
the newsletter to everybody, you know, versus
Yeah.
certain groups.
Segmenting?
Yeah, like
Oh, I
segments
see.
that
Yeah.
of the 1,000 people or 5,000 that are a certain type or have gone to this class or whatever, where you're gonna, yeah.
Absolutely. A really powerful thing that you can do is segmenting, where, so if you know you have part of your audience that is interested in a particular class or service and or product, you can send them information pertaining to that and not give it to everybody who was not interested, and those are going to be really high quality leads. It's great to do that. Again, the big thing there is the time that you have to put into it. Sometimes that's hard to do. So if you don't have time to segment out and really dive deep into that, hire a team or do a broader email that hits more of your audience. But still make sure that the information you're giving has value to everybody that you're sending to. It's not really niche.
Yeah, and I think it's all you.
Yeah, I just had a,
Sure.
will be kind of a one-woman show when it comes to we don't have a marketing department.
Sure, yeah.
Why I am and my background is in graphic design and marketing, but for a company, team of 20, how often, I guess, would you say you need to keep up if you're posting multiple times a week? You're having to also make sure that you keep track of who's responding, if they're asking questions, saying, oh, this was really awesome, you know, saying thank you, you know, and keep that going. I guess I'm thinking in a team of one, kind of how much time, you know, you can make social media specialists your full-time job, you know, that can be a full-time job in and of itself. So when you,
Honestly.
yes. Yes, hence why I'm racing through the door, yes, right before we start. But trying to balance time as far as all of those things and trying to think of like how often you guys are constantly having to watch the comments come in or the, you know, and keep up with that.
So I can speak on this. I usually take about 15 minutes out of my day to just double check all of our accounts, see if there are any comments, any questions or messages I need to answer. And I also do other engagement on other people's accounts with that. So social media, you do have to be social with it.
Right.
And you don't have to do, what I usually do is find accounts that kind of resemble what we have their message. And I just leave a nice comment. That's a great tip. Thank you for the advice. Cool post. It doesn't have to be like super in depth. You don't have to do the spam thing where it says promote me on like X, Y, and Z. Definitely don't do that. But it's just people see you being genuine, like, oh, who is this? Like, should I get involved with them? How can I get involved with them? So it really is only a quick 15-minute check-in.
Yeah, and Faye really hit the nail on the head there. Like, social has to be social. If you're just putting content out and you're not responding to things, you're not reaching out, your channels aren't going to grow.
But social media is one of it can be a slog, especially depending on how active your followers are. And you know, there are certain audiences that really expect you to be available anytime, and that's tough, and that's a business challenge as well, I think.
There's another question. If you have more than one location, is it better to have multiple Facebook pages, for instance, or social media pages for these locations, or is it better to just focus on one?
Yeah, this is a good question. So I think primarily where this would be most relevant is Facebook and Instagram. And Facebook has recently introduced a feature for their business manager where you do actually create branches. So you would have your Facebook page, and then different branches would have their own content, their own tagging abilities for people who visit you or have something to say about you, and then that can filter the content for your different locations. For Instagram, it really, again, depends on your business, I would say, and depends on your audience. We worked many years ago with a dispensary out in California. They had multiple locations. Each dispensary had a very distinct culture. And that was, you know, had their tag handle with the brand name, but then also the location, and they had totally different events, totally different things going on. So on Facebook, that can all be consolidated now, and then on Instagram, you just have to think, do I have distinct and separate culture across my different locations?
Yeah, and I think it really goes into what kind of content you're putting out there. If most of your content is very specific to a location, yeah, you should separate it out. If a lot of your content can apply to your whole audience, then no, keep it in one spot. It'll make it easier for you.
Yeah. Yeah, good questions. All of you.
Any questions in the room here?
And are you guys available if people think of something
Yeah,
afterwards?
we're gonna stay here, for the rest of the hour. And then again, tonight, and then tonight, starting at 5:15, we'll, be at Outdoorsy. And we'll start with just a quick, summary of website best practices as well.
Is
And-
today's topic.
Is today's topic, and then, be available for as long as needed to answer questions there. We also did want to give an offer today, to everyone who visited on Zoom or in person. If you are interested in having us conduct an audit of your website and give some feedback, we do, you would just need to visit the URL, give me one moment. It is our website, which is psychedigitalmarketing.com, and then /free-web-audit. And I'm going to put it in the Zoom chat box here, and I can write it down for anybody.
And can we share your presentation?
That would be great. Yeah, yeah.
And we'll share your contact information and then this link as well.
Great.
We already sent out your website, but to have this link would be helpful too.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.